collages of different kinds of
I'm a
music.
composer.
It's like,
I'm a composer of electronic music, and I compose political music, and I'm still living. The question is how.
Thank you so much. Good evening, or wherever you are. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Akosua Hanson. I'm an activist and also a media practitioner in Accra. And I'm very, very honored to be here today to have this conversation. And I'm going to jump straight into it. Before I do, I would like to say thank you to Thomas, Paul, Peter, and Jim for the great work you did. I must say, having to watch these films to prepare for this put me on a whole reflective journey, seriously, deeply reflective journey. And I'm glad you created, and I'm glad we are going to be having this conversation. So I would like to start off with even just what connects all these three films in the themes. So for instance, in you all explore cultural death, you all explore cultural evolution, you explore music as African oral history and gender, patriarchy, religion. And I wanted to start off this conversation with a quote from It Must Make Peace. I wanted to hear your reflections on this. So one of the subjects in the film says, music allows us to express freely to kings and presidents. Things, if you told them with mere words, they would eat you alive. And I wanted to know what each of you thought about music as a democratic medium for expressing dissent, especially in times like this. Anyone can start.
Maybe I'll just say something first, since that comes from It Must Make Peace. I think it's really important. Culture, particularly in this period that we've been going through, has had a difficult time. I'm speaking to you from Mali, West Africa. And I appreciate this opportunity in this film festival during this time to give voice to our films and the people in our films. It Must Make Peace. My idea was I didn't editorialize a whole lot. I let the artists and the cultural practitioners speak, basically say whatever they needed to say. And so I think now more than ever, I think it's important. And I'll let somebody else respond.
I suppose I could add that, yes, there's something about the times that we live in now where I suppose the voice of the state, the voice of the church, and the voice of the corporate institutions is quite loud in public space. It's in all the advertising, it's in the laws, it's in the news. And so for me, culture and music in particular is the way that people speak back to all these bodies and say, these are the things that matter to us. These are the things that we value. And it's been surprising to me how much more of a role culture plays, rather than you'd imagine that the law would be kind of a better shaping of the will of the people, but it seems as if the law sometimes ignores the will of the people or overruns the will of the people. The whole Black Lives Matter movement is people saying that these laws don't see us. And so, yeah, I think culture is so important right now, and is becoming increasingly important as the one space where anyone ideally can speak back to all these institutions.
Yes, I agree what is said. I mean, music plays a very important role to contradict bigger and smaller issues. I think we should, however, also not forget that being an artist and being a musician is not easy in today's world. It takes courage. It takes a lot of work to move forward. And even in a country like Switzerland, sometimes now in the pandemic, in the time of the pandemic, we are also worried that a lot of things are disappearing, you know, that big companies take huge shares of everything, and that artists are held back, you know, because you can only stand up maybe 10 times in your life or 20 times, I don't know. But if you go always two steps forward and 1 or 2 back, it's hard. And so I think it's important. It's also for Norient important to support underground or alternative voices in this world. And I think it's about the community and people supporting each other so that this important voice can be heard, and also heard outside the insider circles.
Okay. I think I have to go back a little bit in the story of Contradict. We had in 2013, we had a completely other project, and we went to Ghana and met the fucking boys there. And then the times changed. In Europe, we had all these new populists. We have Trump in America. And then it was a decision from us as artists together with these artists in Ghana to react and to contradict. So that's the title of the film. It's a pragmatical title. And I think it is a must to contradict. It is a must to react. It is a, yeah, that's my life. That's what we have to do at the end. So with all our education, with all our knowledge and so on. So, and it's no different. For me, it's not a difference if there are people from Africa, if it's me from Switzerland. I think we have to do it together. So.
Thank you. To piggyback off of that, Paul, I wanted to ask, you spoke about your technique in letting the artists, the musicians speak for themselves. And that was something I actually really loved watching in Must Make Peace, how the performer performs, and then there's this soliloquy of a message over the performance, over the music. I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit more about why that creative technique and what you hoped it would serve.
Well, it was something that evolved. We were going through a process of discovering a lot of what we were filming and the people we were interviewing. It wasn't random. We did research and we knew where we were going. We knew more or less the people that we were going to interview in the musical traditions. But it was really a process of discovery. I've been in Mali since 2003 and going on 18 years now. And every day I realize that, every day I'm surprised by how my understanding, my cultural understanding of this culture evolves and changes. And so I really wanted to know what people's perspectives were and not editorialize. The music drew me in, and the film is in, I don't know, I suppose maybe 8 different languages. You know, the interviews are in 8 different languages. There are a lot of different languages, and we couldn't always know really even what the responses were at the time that we were asking the questions. And so in a way, we didn't really have a choice in terms of letting it be that way. And the co-director, Brian David Melnick, also, that was, the interview technique was something that he had developed also. And so we pushed ourselves as far as we could and into the most remote places we could get to, and going through this protocol, this process to be welcomed into the community and create a space where the people we were interviewing felt very comfortable. And that was really the objective. And then once we achieved that level of trust, then it was just a matter of asking the questions and letting them respond. And I feel like for this particular film, to have that level of authenticity, that was the only really approach that made sense.
Thank you so much for that answer. Jim, I wanted to come to you. I've been following the Nest Collective for a while now, and I must say I'm honored to be talking to you today. It's like a Stan fan here. I wanted to ask, since we were talking about culture earlier, I wanted to ask what you made of culture not being a static thing. Culture is definitely something that is always evolving, right? Versus the friction that happens where specific cultures are erased or demonized, right? Would you say culture needs to evolve, so that's why it's happening anyway, no matter what is gonna happen? Or there must be a kind of balance where as culture evolves, there's still a preservation, there's still a continuation of our histories.
Absolutely. I feel like it's very easy for people to say that culture evolves and to then take this kind of laid back attitude where you leave culture alone and it will shape itself. But we must recognize that culture can also be suppressed. And I think the governments of the day have had have had many years to perfect the art of suppressing culture when that culture becomes inconvenient or aggressive or dangerous. And so, yes, of course, culture evolves, but I feel like we're not thinking very hard as societies about how to protect cultures that are urgent or that need to be protected from the vagaries of co-opting by state or the corporate. I keep mentioning the state and the corporate as these agents of anti-culture in a sense, even though, and this is me coming from Kenya, where, you know, when you travel to European cities and you see a film festival is sponsored by the state, you know, city of X, city of Y. I think most African governments have taken a very different approach to culture, where it's like the artists kind of manage the culture and keep it together on their own without any state support. So growing up in a country like that means that I've always seen the kind of anti-culture power of the state and the corporate. So yeah, I feel definitely culture even evolves around suppression, and those evolutions are always interesting to see how people kind of speak when speaking is not allowed, or sing and dance when singing and dancing are not allowed. There's so many dances and so many kinds of genres of music that have evolved, even when there was no space for that evolution. So on one hand, I do have a lot of hope that human beings will always find a way to continue singing and dancing and writing and loving around the forces that push back on that. But sadly, there are those cultures that have not been able to survive the pushbacks. And I think the film we made called Tapi was very much about how a culture can be not strong enough to survive that kind of suppression.
And also on the continent, even this idea of a specific type of schizophrenia we have because of colonialism, and how, for instance, then the government may be anti-culture, but then suddenly they would pick culture to say queer Africans are against our culture, or you know, they pick it as and when. We are currently having a big national debate and conversation about queer Ghanaians, and all of a sudden it's not our culture, even though we still demonize other things that we still call our culture. You know, so I just also, what do you think about that? How we can pick and choose, and this kind of schizophrenic identity?
That's expediency, where you use culture, you kind of weaponize culture to further political gain. And yes, the queer conversation in Africa, and to some extent even the question around women and their rights and their freedoms, you often hear culture being used to push back on those freedoms, where people say a woman's place is XYZ, or women, or your grandmother didn't behave like this. So I tend to ignore all those kind of reframings of culture, because I know those will pass. The ways that governments kind of cherry pick which parts of culture they want to highlight and the ones that are inconvenient. It's a tactic, and I think society. I like to imagine that societies are getting better at seeing those, the ones that you're referring to as schizophrenic moments, and to say, that doesn't make sense. I hope, at least.
So Peter, you talked earlier around saying that we must contradict, right? And I wanted to ask about contradict versus contradictions, and contradictions human beings can have, contradictions societies can have. And how, for instance, the power of music, the power of satire with the fucking boys who you followed for 10 years to do this film, does a great job of unveiling these contradictions. So for instance, the film starts with, we see a video of the fucking boys doing a music video for Help America, right? And if you look at what happened on the Capitol Hill on January 6th, the song was prophetic. I mean, with domestic terrorists attacking the Capitol, and they were really collecting money to help America 10 years ago. And this is what we are seeing in 2021. So what would you say about this? The power of satire, contradiction, and contradict.
It's one way. It's one way, and it's a high sensual way, because you had always to translate a little bit. So that, I think, as a artistical way, it's quite funny. So, but I think what we can do with a film, what we can do with music, we can't give solutions. We can only trigger some themes. So we can go to a point, and then the spectator can handle it by himself. So we are always throwing themes on it. So, and that is in a satirical way, I think it's one of the best ways. So, and for sure, we have in Contradict, we have so much in it. We have also a little bit Black Lives Matter, a little bit. We have this, we have religion and so on. And the way we have worked is, I think a film happened. Normally it happened. You are preparing, you are researching, and then if you are going shooting, then the most important is that you forget this all a little bit. You have it probably in your womb, in your stomach probably, but you have to forget it, and then you have to be curious. You have to watch, you have to see, you have to look with your eyes wide open, and then you react. So that was our system. So, and if this is satirical, if it's not, if it's because the normal life, it's so strange. So it has,
Normal life is strange. It's a wonder. Agreed. Agreed. And Thomas, what do you also say about this? There was a technique you used in the film, which I totally loved, where it was like a philosophical pauses, and you were like streaming through Accra by night in certain scenes. And what happens is there's a voice over, different voices saying specific things. It gave us the feeling of as though you were capturing the inner monologue of a whole city, you know. Can you talk a little bit about that in answering this question around the purpose of Contradict? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically, for us, it's important that we didn't do a film that is flat, because Accra and probably every place in the world is full of topics, of themes, of layers, of contradictions, as you said. And we were working in Accra for like 7-8 years, I think, on and off. And I think we are both, as Peter said, people who try to talk to as many people as possible, you know, in different constellations. In Contradict, it was with ministers and with people on street. And we heard a lot of things. And for example, we heard that youth is very angry, that there is a lot of depression going on, that yeah, there's a lot of anger basically. And we wanted to have all these layers a little bit in the film, so that the film is not flat in the end. And we did interviews. I mean, we asked others to do interviews for us in the film. You did some interviews, Nana, with us going on, and all these interviews came into these scenes that we just put as audio. So we didn't take voices from the internet. It's all interviews we have done, or we have done with people in Accra. And we wanted to put this layer in where people are, where it triggers a bit what is going on in Accra. We hope it triggers a little bit the feelings that we felt and that we heard of in Accra. Yeah.
I can explain it a little bit, this thing from the artistical way, because it's a naive image. I think we are going in a town, and then you can imagine what is in the air, what is in these radio waves. You don't see what is over these things, and what are the themes. So that was the idea, to do it like this. So
I would like to, then we're trying to still get some questions, but there are no questions for now. But when questions come, I'll definitely open it up. But to go on, I wanted to talk about music as a conduit to spiritual dimensions, and this cuts across all your films. Paul in It Must Make Peace, it was heavily there. There was even a scene where the dance was to call a trance, was to call genies from the river, right? And Jim, also for the actual ritual of Tapi, the dancers perform. It's a trance. It's called spirits. And also with Contradict, I definitely follow the fucking boys, and I find what they do as spiritual. When you even just talk to even Akan, the other people you featured, their work is very meditative, and it gives you a certain there was this quote in It Must Make Peace that would maybe define this. The subject was like, music calls a spirit that calls other spirits, right? And I just wanted to know what you all, thought about this, what your reflections about this was in making these films.
Yeah, I think we were trying to get close to the source of the music, and that's our work here beyond the documentary bit. Our work in Mali, myself and I have a team of about 12 people that are all West African, and our goal is to preserve music at its source. Everyone knows Mali is very well known for the groups that have, not just Mali, but Mali in particular, because that's where I'm at, but Salif Keita, Ali Farka Touré, Basikou Kouyaté, Amadou and Mariam, Toumani Diabate, Tinari Win, all these groups that have traveled the world and have, through them, people have learned about African music, about Malian music. And our mission is to protect the music at its source, because I believe that as long as music exists ritually and is alive ritually and continues ritually, that is the source that all these other musicians draw from. And it's really the power behind the music here, and it very much is alive and exists. Afal Bokoum, who says that quote, I'm also his producer. We just released an album not that long ago on World Circuit Records called Linde. But his father was in the north of Mali. He was probably the most well-known violin player, traditional violin, and that's the purpose of that instrument, is to summon the genies, and it's healing, and so trance is a whole another subject, but that's just to say that our mission is to protect that, to make sure that that's continuing in our own small way, by helping the activities, the transfer of that knowledge from generation to generation, and going into what are now conflict zones to make sure that the annual festivals where that information is passed on from person to person can continue and contribute also to the validate it. Mali is experiencing a wave of conservatism. The whole world is experiencing that, but it's in the Mali, there's in the north of Mali, and well, all over West Africa, actually, there's a lot of extremist groups, Salafist and various extremist groups that are trying to convince people that this cultural heritage is bad, and so yeah, could ramble on about that for a long time, but it's really important.
For me, music is, for me, there can be no ritual without music. I feel like if you think of music as organized sound, organized noise, then I feel like it's such a pathway to a different state for human beings. If you look at human beings, like we're so in our day-to-day lives, we are so kind of restricted in like the range of expression that is allowed. And it's often noise and music or very intense silence that shifts us out of our kind of day-to-day ways of being. So for me, like, when I'm talking about the spirit, when I'm making a film about higher states, different states, there must be noise, there must be sound, there must be music, there must be dance. I've worked with music for as long as I have been in the creative sector. Music has saved my life many times. So yeah, whenever I need to save the lives of my characters, I'll probably use music.
Even the joy in your face, as you say, you know, it's definitely a god or goddess sitting next to you.
Yeah, I'll take that. Music is something else, man.
Maybe I can try to start. I think definitely I agree with you, Nana, that spirituality and that's there with the fucking boys, with the artists that we met. But in a way, I cannot really speak for them because it's a very personal state and process where people or where artists are in. I can maybe speak about me a little bit, or me and Peter. I mean, what came to my mind when Jim was talking is, when you do a film like this, that is still in the category maybe of documentary, you have in a way at least two sides. One is you want to be as close as possible to a phenomena, to a place, to the artist. You want to be true, correct, fair with the artists. The other side is, while filming and also while editing, you are an artist in a way yourself, and the film starts to tell its own story in a way, and you cannot, and maybe you don't want to control this completely. That's maybe also what Peter said in the beginning. You have to leave things out, and I think you cannot make it differently. So the film has two sides. It's about Ghana and it's about us as well, and it tells its story. I also don't understand our film completely. I don't know what it tells to you, to other people, you know. You cannot control it. And that's also the passion in a project like this.
I guess that's what art does. It's like a kind of prism. Everyone has a different light interpretation, I guess. Yeah. Peter, what about you? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, for me, music is a language. And language, we can handle it like this. It's quite, and this language touch other other regions in my brain. So I like to work with this also a little bit, and also. Yeah, music is like that, art is like this. It's always a transcode or a translation and so on. So you have always to be active a little bit. So it's not a thumb thing. It's not like going shopping for me. So it's something that, yeah, that light you a little bit, and you are involved, and with this knowledge we are doing our films. It's like it goes like this. So, and I think for sure it has a spiritual side on it, for sure. But yeah, where it is exactly.
The radio waves. Jim, I wanted to ask, talking about, you know, music being also a spiritual conduit. In your film, the way things seemed to resolve was that they would remove the ritual aspect and just keep the dance for tourism. Can you talk a bit about this, you know, which is actually what is happening across the continent? Let's make our dance, let's make that the tourist thing, you know, that let's use it for that, but let's demonize the ritual that actually came with it.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at the Christian church in Africa, they couldn't let go of music. They let go of everything else. They let go of the intellect, of the deep reading, but the music, they couldn't let it go, because that's the only way to make Africans want to stay somewhere. There has to be sound, there has to be music, there has to be dancing, and I'm always amused at how the church has to work to keep the music like at a certain level. Like, don't let it go too far, because like then, you know, the spirit takes over and you're not really sure which spirit is taking over. Yeah, I think it's the safest thing you can do with some of these and I think one of us said here that there's many things about art that you can't understand, even if you're the author. And that's very particularly true for music, where you can author a song, but the thing that it does for people and to people is completely beyond anything you could have imagined, because the song just kind of touches people in a very different way. And so I guess it's the most simple way to make things safer for consumption is to cut out the unknown, cut out anything that is ritual, anything that has any deeper meaning, and just, you know, let's keep it for the tourists, let's keep it for the church, let's keep it simple and whatever. But music is ungovernable, and the arts are ungovernable in that sense, that human beings sometimes can't help the way they react to some of these things. And I think that's like the most powerful thing about music, that you can't govern it in that way. Even the most pop, the most church song, the most corporate advertising anthem can still touch people in ways that you could never have imagined. So I put a lot of faith in music, because I'm like, this is the one thing that humans created, and somehow it is better than us, if that makes sense.
It does. Okay, so as we are wrapping up, I actually want us to wrap up our conversation with something that was mentioned earlier about this wave in conservatism. You know, I'm seeing it in West Africa. We've seen it with terrorism. I'm in a very heavily religious Christian country, and currently seeing how through religion the oppression is being made more entrenched. And so I just want reflections from all of you on lessons from your films, you know, and how as artists, as activists, as filmmakers, we in our way are pushing back against this this wave of conservatism, still trying to build a world that is free from injustice, free from oppression, free from suffering, free, where people can be who they are despite their gender, sexuality, you know. And I just wanted to wrap up on that with all of you. Any thoughts you had?
Yeah, it's important that people's cultural identity remains reinforced. That's what protects them from conservatism. The strategy of the extremists in Mali has been to ban, you know, people's cultural identity, the way they communicate with each other, the way they sing and dance and celebrate and think and communicate and all these things. The idea was to silence that and replace it wholesale with something else, and it's fragile. You know, this culture is very strong in one sense, but it's also quite fragile. And so the strategy is to silence it for as long as possible until it's forgotten, to keep it from being passed from generation to generation, and then replace it with something that's that really has no soul. And so that was the goal of our film, is really to keep these traditions alive. And we show it all over Mali. You know, the film was made for Mali, actually. We were lucky enough to get it into film festivals around the world, but as part of our project here, we go back to all the places where we filmed and we show it, and people really love it, and it puts them, it reconnects them with themselves and this amazing history. And so I guess that's something kind of in particular that was unique about this film, was that we made it to be shown here in villages and all across the country.
I'd say that I mean, the world feels like it's upside down. Last year was ridiculous in the sense of shaking our foundations of what we think is fixed and what is natural. And I've been wondering about how, if you look at the music coming out in the world right now, you wouldn't know that the world is upside down. It's like, I feel like there's something about the music industry where everyone's just kind of working to secure their bags. And the thing about securing bags is that it can really distract you from the fire happening outside, right? And so I've been worrying about that, the sense that we used to live in a world where the arts were the most vibrant, most bleeding edge place where what was going on in society, like the artists were able to reflect that, amplify that, speak to that. But what happens to a world where the artists are one step behind? So what are the anthems for 2020? I didn't hear any. I didn't hear. I mean, I'm just trying to imagine what's going on in the medical community who've seen such trauma, and where have the artists been to speak to that? We've seen riots in the capital, and yeah, people say that there's a right-wing thing happening across the world, but let's look at America, where that's like amped up to a ridiculous degree. What is the soundtrack to that? So I've been wondering, where are the artists? What are we doing with our time? How have we spent the last year? How has the shift has happened to the world? How has it shifted the arts? And not just in terms of like people recording music remotely. I'm talking about, what are we singing about? What are we making films about? How are artists responding to climate change? I mean, it's been a UN thing for a long time. But when the snowstorms become a reality, when the wildfires become a reality, where are the artists? What are we singing about? That's a question that I'm really thinking about this year. And I'm hoping that the music industry can take time away from being an industry and actually kind of respond to what human beings are going through right now. Because who are we singing for, right? Who are we making films for, if not for these humans who are going through all kinds of crazy stuff?
Lots to think about.
To come back a little bit, I said it at the beginning. With our work, with our artwork, we can trigger some ideas, and that is how Contradict should work. Is that we show to the people, there are the fucking boys. They are contradicting like this. They do it with satire. There is a Khan and so on. And I hope that there will be a backlash on the people, that they are asking themselves, oh, what I am doing now. So for me, it's I think it's this side that we can do with films. So we can, yes, we can light on some things. So that, I think, it's our work, it's our must, it's our destiny.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, we are, and also another level is that, I mean, we were and are and will always be outsiders there as well, with certain possibilities as well, because we could go to these mega churches and make an interview with these bishops, you know, with Bishop Obinim, who people told us never have given an interview. So our strategy was also pushed also by some of the artists that liked that a lot, was also to interview these huge priests and try to give a glimpse behind their performances, try to show how they speak. And it's often scary as well. Sometimes it's funny, but I think it shouldn't really be funny. It's actually quite sad. And also with these mega churches, these pastors, to make interviews with them is delicate. We thought it's important to show it, but we cut a lot of these interviews out because they became, in a way, also a little bit heroes because they say so strange things. So we had to cut it. We had to cut a lot out. But I think that's also our role, to look behind performances where we can, you know, and we could meet these ministers, while the fucking boys told us many times for them it would have not been possible. So we could at least try to add something to a story in Ghana.
Right. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to open your, to turn on your mic and ask before we go. Does anyone have any questions or reflections? All right. Okay. It looks like nope, we don't. So I guess this is where we are going to end this conversation. It's been such a pleasure talking to all of you. Once again, thank you so much for the work you've put out and the spaces you put us in because of your work. And yes, I'm definitely going to keep following all you do. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Thanks.